Hey everybody, Morgan Wright, CEO and founder of the National Center for Open and Unsolved Cases, Open Unsolved as we call it, or the center, or just go to here, openunsolved.org. Register for our July 30th demo that's coming up from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time. That's where we're going to give you a high level view of everything. Here's what we're working on, here's what we're doing. And then if you so choose, and you want to be one of our beta testers, we have a session running on Friday, August 1st from 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern Time, to where if you're a citizen or law enforcement officer and you want to see dive deep and help us figure out, is it working as expected, is it delivering the data as expected, is it functioning properly, that's where we could use your insight. All you got to do is fill out a quick little form with any insights or observations you make, and we'll take it from there. So you can find all of that by just going to openunsolved.org. What I wanted to do today real quickly, as we get going, as we get closer to the launch of openunsolved.org, the National Center, got a great question this morning. I was talking to somebody about speaking engagements and stuff, and she was asking about what it is we do, here. And she says, "Is it like crowdsourcing? Is it like 4chan?" And I said, "No, it's not." But that's a great question. So I want to just explain real quickly what the difference is between Holmes and why it's not crowdsourcing. The way I explain crowdsourcing is like you just throw it up, you throw it out there, you throw it against the wall and see what sticks. It works really good though. Give you a great example of crowdsourcing. There was a hit and run one time. I don't remember all the circumstances, but I just remember the cases that there was a hit and run one time. The law enforcement agency was looking for the vehicle that might have done. All they had was a piece or a part off of it. So they took a picture of it, they posted up there, and within, a couple hours, somebody who was an expert on that make and model of vehicle said, "Hey, it's a 69 Pontiac Le Mans," which was mine. I was not involved in the accident. But, they were able to harness some kind of collective intelligence, but the thing was it was unpredictable. They threw it out there. They had no idea who was going to reply back to it. They had no way to make a connection other than they hoped that somebody was on that channel at that time looking at that piece of information as it came across. So again, the burden goes all on you. So I pulled up a quick definition too of crowdsourcing. What is crowdsourcing? Crowdsourcing is the practice of obtaining information, ideas, services, or solutions by soliciting contributions from a large, often undefined group of people, typically via the internet. So it leverages the collective intelligence, which that's good if you're looking at something discrete. I'm not going to get into this whole Coldplay thing, but that was crowdsourcing. That was not done through a predictable, reliable way. They had a bunch of people out there on the internet looking, saying, "Hey, I know who this guy is." They compared it to pictures. I don't do that kind of stuff. I mean, their lives are going to be tough enough. They don't need to be the butt of jokes from now until eternity. God forbid that anybody out there else makes a mistake and they have to relive it on the internet for the rest of their lives. But that was the latest example of crowdsourcing. That is not what we do at the National Center. One of the things we do at the National Center, this is about predictability. Give you an example. Again, I go back to using the crime scene. The difference between crowdsourcing and predictability is crowdsourcing is kind of like if I were a law enforcement officer investigating a case, I put out a press release to say, if anybody knows anything, give us a call. I have no idea who it goes to. I have no idea who's reading it. I have no idea what audience I'm getting to. I have no control over that. I just throw it out there. Somebody shares, and hopefully somewhere along the line, somebody will say, "Hey, I know something about it." Again, hope is not a strategy. What we do here is differently is there may be things about the vehicle. In other words, let's take that same case to where it says, "I want to solve this hit and run." Not the crime of the century, but let's say it was a hit and run fatality, serious crime, right? Somebody was killed in a hit and run. One of the things I could do though is I can still put it out there to crowdsource, but I put the link under there that drives them back to our case, because you always want to make sure people are making connections. But what I do with our case is I would take that same uh, case, that the crime that's being investigated, and I would put what's relevant. Well, what's relevant is, where did the accident happen, right? So the accident happened at the corner of Main and Elm Street. One of 10,000 streets like that in the U.S., right? But Main and Elm. So I would put that in there. Anybody who has a connection to Main and Elm would see that, and then they would see the picture. Then they would see the picture that law enforcement wants you to see, which is, "Hey, do you know anything about this missing piece?" So you can put it into a group like 4chan, what they do, but put the link in there, say, "Hey, if you know anything about it, click here." Because what we want to do is create connections. We want to use science and predictability. Again, hope is not a strategy. We don't solve cases by hope. We solve them through strategy. We solve them through science. We solve them through just what we call goyakad, get off your ass, knock on doors, good old fashioned hard work. So, one of the things Holmes does, like DNA, right? DNA is very specific. Well, a location is very specific. We actually put, when you put an address in, we just convert it into a zip plus four. We don't identify exactly where it is, but it goes into an area. The center of that area, called the centroid, is where we put a pin. And then if there's 10 connections, you'll see a pin on the map with the number 10 on there that says, hey, there's 10 connections here. It doesn't tell you who, it just says in this area, a defined area, there's 10 connections. Well, if I'm a law enforcement officer, an agency, and I put a case in there and I say, here's all my 10 locations that are of interest to me, it takes it and it looks to see who's on the citizen side now. Remember, you can't connect the dots unless you collect the dots. So let's collect the dots, put them all in one place. Those dots right now are locations. So here's the locations from the law enforcement officer side. Here's the location from the citizen side. Now, to make this work, we need a couple things, right? Need more cases, we need more people, and then we need more people putting in more locations. If you join and you just put in one location, you got one shot, right? So think of it like buying a lottery ticket, right? You buy just one ticket, or do you buy 10 because you want 10 chances instead of one? So with this, the more locations you put in, the greater of a probability, the higher the probability, not hope, the higher the probability that you're going to be connected to a case somewhere. Why? Because you've put in 10 locations. That gives us 10 times more things to look at rather than just one. So I may be putting in, you may be connected to a case from out in California, as well as Indiana, as well as Idaho or Kansas, simply from that same location. Why? Because that same location has popped up in all of those other cases. And what could that be? We could be looking at a serial crime. We could be looking at a victim who was, say, a trucker. And we know that this trucker stopped in this truck stop. They stopped here. They stopped there before they were eventually, say, robbed or kidnapped, or something terrible might have happened to them. We hope not. But again, it's a made up story. So nobody got hurt. No real humans were used for my example. But we could, all of those four locations may mean something. Well, you may live in that area, but you may be connected to this case because this trucker who does not live there, lives in another state, but happened to stop at that truck stop. You work there, or that's one area you frequent, so you put it in. So we're using predictability, we're using science, we're using logic to connect people to cases. There's still a role for crowdsourcing, but crowdsourcing is less predictable, it's less reliable, and it requires you every day to get on that channel and scan for something that says, what might I be connected to? Now, I'm not going to stop you from doing that. But what I'm saying is that becomes an extension, a strategy of extension based on what we use the case for. So that's not your only means. That's another way to get the information out, because at the end of the day, you want somebody clicking on the link that's in that case to bring them back to the site, to get them to either they're already registered and you say, hey, look, maybe you need to add a few more locations, or they don't have an account. We get them to register. They put in their locations, and all of a sudden, voila, not only are they connected to that case, but they're connected to 10 other cases that they might have information on. Sometimes it's simple as background information on a victim, what they call victimology. When you're working like a homicide, you go back through and you say, okay, what do we know about the victim? Where do they live? Where do they work? What kind of behaviors did they engage in that might put them at risk? Not that they were doing risky behaviors, but like maybe they jogged, maybe they worked out. Where I live in Northern Virginia, every now and then we get people attacked on the W&OD trail. And so what kind of activities do they engage in that might put them at risk? Well, if you're a single female, not single in terms of married, but by yourself, single female, jogging down that path, you may be more at risk than somebody like me riding my bike, because quite frankly, none of those guys dig me. I mean, the shirt looks cool. It's Tommy Bahama. As you'll notice with most of my wardrobe, it's going to be Tommy Bahama, or my new favorite is Southern Tide. Why? Because it's owned by Tommy Bahama. But that's kind of what we're doing. We're taking the element of chance out of it. We're making it predictable. Why? Because it's ones and zeros. If this 1 and 0 on this case matches this 1 and 0 from this citizen location, you're going to make a connection. We're not making a connection based on, well, they kind of had a green shirt. No, that may be information in the case, but the way we're starting off making connections is by address. And those addresses are converted to lat long, latitude, longitude. That's a pin in the map. So the lat long does not identify you, doesn't identify where you live. In fact, that lat long pin could be, hey, I went to school here. So I went to Fort Hays State University, go Tigers, or Notre Dame, yay, go Irish. You might put a pin there, and that would create a connection for you. But here's the great thing about it if you're the citizen. Once you register, once you put your locations in there, you're just waiting for cases to come in. As more cases come in, you may get more connections or you may get none. It just depends on how many locations you put in there. It's not the element of chance, right? Hope is not a strategy. So, what we're saying is here, take all the other things you're doing, but at the core, at the center, put all the dots in one place. Collect all your dots out here, put all the dots in one place so that we can connect them. I'll give you a great example, and this happened during the DC sniper case. At some point, maybe a webinar, I'll explain the work that I did on that, where I actually went out to the FBI and I said, "This is how you identify people who may be linked to a crime." And it's based upon research they did showing the number of people that have a single contact, two, three, four, five, and we know from serial criminals, especially like serial killers, they tend to have a lot of low-level contacts with the police for like minor offenses, disorderly conduct, intoxication, maybe minor traffic violations. But the reason I say all of that is that we could bring all of these. I may do a webinar around that just to explain about how we go about creating these connections and the theory behind it. But the thing is, once you do a case, once you put that case out there, what we want to do is, as a law enforcement agency, you want to put as many locations in there so that you can connect to them. The reason I was mentioning the sniper case, one of the things that slowed down the sniper case was the issue of ballistics. So, by the way, only one place in the United States where the tag number of the suspect vehicle from Malvo and Muhammad was run through what they call NCIC, the National Crime Information Center. It was run 13 times in 33 days in the National Capital Region. But one of those times it was run in Montgomery, Alabama, where one of the shootings happened. They were able to tie those together later by ballistics, but they did not get that ballistic information into what's called NIBIN, the National Integrated Ballistics Information Network, right away. So it sat there. It wasn't able to make a connection. So my point is, imagine that you wanted to go to a store, but that store says, "Hey, we're not Amazon. We just sell milk. If you want bread, you got to go to the bread store. And if you want jelly, you got to go to the jelly store." A PB&J sounds good right now. So if you want peanut butter, you got to go to the peanut butter store. What would happen if we stovepiped all of that stuff? We had no one central place that you could come to, that you could collect all the food, all the things that you need and go shopping. What do we call that? We call that a grocery store. We call that Wegmans or Whole Foods or Kroger or Dillon's, or, if you're Midwest, right? Imagine what it would be if you had to go shopping at all these different stores. Well, that's been the problem with information. We've put it in so many different stores. There's been no way to collect it all together. So what I want is one-stop shopping. I want the Amazon of information. I want the Whole Foods of food. I want the Wegmans of food. I want to go one place, be able to shop one time and get everything I need there. What did they do? They collected the dots. They collected all the different foods. This has been the challenge with traditional systems. They throw it out there, look to see what sticks, but the burden has always been on you, the citizen, to go out there and figure out, okay, well, then I scanned it today. Let me go scan it tomorrow. Well, what if you missed that one day? And that one day was the one day you had information that could have helped solve, right? Let's take chance out of it. Let's take hope out of it. Let's put all our dots in one place. The dots right now are locations. We will connect those dots because we've collected the dots. And we will not get what happened in the sniper case, which is ballistic information was sitting in Alabama. It took quite a while before it was able to be linked to the one in DC, to where they had definitive linkage based on ballistic information, right? So imagine if law enforcement, if there was no central place, you could determine if somebody was wanted for a crime. So if I stopped you on the side of the road, I had to send a teletype out. Yeah, I'm dating myself. Teletype out to 18,000 law enforcement agencies saying, "Hey, is Morgan Wright wanted for anything?" How inefficient would that be? Well, we've made it efficient for law enforcement because it's called NCIC, National Crime Information Center. I stop you. I run your name. I can find out, are you on the terrorist watch list? Are you in the violent gang and terrorist file, what they call VIGTOF, I think? Is there a lookout for you? Is somebody looking for you? Whatever the case, I have one place. I run your name one time. By the way, that's what they did. I was at a thing called the IJIS Institute, the Integrated Justice Information Systems Institute. The Department of Justice came to us and said, "Hey, look, we've got all these sex offender registry sites. There's too many of them, right? There was, I think, 125 different sites, right? We need one site." So now you can go to the National Sex Offender Registry, NSOR, I believe, .gov. But they've made it so you can put in one name, one time, and check 125 different databases. Doesn't that make sense? That's what we're doing with HOLMES. We're putting all the dots in one place. We're connecting the dots. It is not crowdsourcing. Crowdsourcing is a technique that can augment and extend what we're doing. But at the end of the day, all the dots have got to be in one place. That's the difference between HOLMES and crowdsourcing. I hope you guys like this. We'll be leading up. So again, register, openunsolved.org. Make sure you get in there, and we will see you on the webinar on July 30th at 3 p.m.